And a top focus this hour, President Donald Trump said that the negotiations with India on a trade deal are still ongoing. This comes even as Donald Trump earlier announced that a 25% tariff on all goods imported from India would start on Friday. Donald Trump also threatened additional penalties for India's Russian oil and military equipment purchases.
As you know, Prime Minister Modi is a friend of mine, but they don't do very much business in terms of business with us. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high. They have one of the highest tariffs in the world. Now they're willing to cut it very substantially, but we'll see what happens. We're talking to India now. We'll see what happens.
Trump said that India has one of the most quote-unquote obnoxious non-monetary trade barrier policies, adding that rather he even threatened more penalties for Indian firms buying Russian arms and oil. And this even as the world was trying to force Moscow to end the Ukraine war. What the penalty would be was unclear on part of the US. While Russia continues to be the top oil supply to India during the first 6 months of this year, making up 35% of overall supplies to the country. Separately, he also announced an extra 10% tariffs on countries aligning with the BRICS group, which he called anti-American policies.
Well, we're negotiating right now, and it's also BRICS. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially the trade. We're talking to India now. We'll see what happens.
In response, the Indian government said that it is still studying the implications of Donald Trump's announcements and remains dedicated to securing a fair trade deal. The government's statement read, and I quote, India and the US have been engaged in negotiations on concluding a fair, balanced and mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreement over the past few months. We remain committed to that objective, unquote. Separately, Donald Trump even announced a massive oil partnership with Pakistan. Donald Trump's social media post did not, however, provide any details on the deal between the US and Pakistan. President Trump on social media account also said that, and I quote from that we have just concluded a deal with the country of Pakistan, whereby Pakistan and the United States will work together on developing their massive oil reserves. We are in the process of choosing the oil company that will lead this partnership. Who knows, maybe they will be selling oil to India someday, unquote. And Ajay Srivastava, he's founder of Global Trade Research Initiative, is joining us on the broadcast from the National Capital. Mr. Srivastava, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast. Firstly, how do you view Donald Trump's slew of tweets that have come in recent days, especially against India ahead of the August 1 deadline that's been set by the US?
I don't read much into those things. They merely indicate that Trump wants to pressurize India. Nothing more than that. It's a pause in the negotiations. US team will be visiting India in the second week of August, and negotiations will continue. So this tweet I read only as a pressure-creating tactics, nothing more.
Srivastava, talking about the report that has been put out by the think tank, how do you explain the trade deficit narrative by the US, which appears to be misleading as well as incomplete in many ways?
Yes, so Mr. Trump in February, when our Prime Minister visited US, he says US has a trade deficit of $100 billion. So trade deficit was about $45 billion. Why there is trade deficit? For example, India has a trade deficit with China of over $100 billion. With US, it's $45 billion. Because China has products. Despite India's high tariff, China is able to supply those products. US doesn't have sufficient number of industrial products, sufficient quantity, sufficient quality of industrial products, which it can supply to the world. For example, let's see what are the top US exports to India. You know, the petroleum, crude, petroleum oils, diamonds, then scrap, aluminum scrap, steel scrap, and those things. These account for about 40 to 45% of US exports to India. Of course, US is good in highly subsidized agriculture or very high-tech goods or the energy products like petroleum. Rest, the industrial products, which account for majority of the global trade, they don't figure in any substantive way. That's where China rules the world. And that's why you are seeing, in all these trade agreements, US intuitively they know they cannot sell. They cannot sell because they don't have products. They have expensive products. They don't make the products. That's why they are seeking commitments from the countries to buy their products. In normal trade course, they are not able to sell many products. So trade deficit will remain there, and so two reasons for the trade deficit. First reason, they don't have sufficient type of industrial products, and second, they don't need to earn dollars like us or everybody else. They just hit the print command to print the dollar and buy things. That's why they overbuy from the world. These are the two reasons for their high trade deficit. They should understand this instead of troubling the world trade.
Yes, so Mr. Srivastava, important that you mentioned about these sectors which add significantly to the US revenues. Talk to us about how can India use this as a significant bargaining chip while the American delegation is yet to visit later in the month of August with the 6th round of talks between India and US that is still set to happen.
India should be very clear when US is talking about the trade deficit with India, then India say, okay, we will make tariffs zero on 95% of your exports to India. Which are these? These are all industrial products. India can make tariff zero from day one for the US products. Rest 5% we say don't touch. These are mostly agriculture and dairy products. So if trade deficit is a problem, then we are solving this problem for 95% of their exports by making tariff zero on industrial products. Agriculture, no, it's not a trade subject for us. For us, this is a livelihood issue for 700 million people of India. If any problem to them is there, it will be a big political, social, economic problem for India.
Yes, Mr. Srivastava, Donald Trump has called Russia and India as dead economies. Is that even a realistic assessment in your case regards with India? Or do you think it's only restricted to India buying the Russian oil?
I think I don't want to read too much into this. He looks like an emotional person. That's why he's saying all these things. Otherwise, if last year an IMF or World Bank report was there, which says 15% of the world growth is driven by China and India. So China and India are the fastest growing economy, which are not growing themselves. They're pulling the world growth also. So when Mr. Trump says this, it only says his frustrations. We should royally ignore all these things.
Yes, Mr. Srivastava, rightly put. And what's a question till now is actually what ticked him off to make such a statement. Remains to be seen whether anything transpires in the 6th round of talks or not. Appreciate you joining us on the broadcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Shifting focus then, the United States has sanctioned 6 Indian companies for engaging in transactions involving Iranian petroleum and petrochemical products, which according to the US has violated American sanctions under a 2018 executive order that was signed by President Donald Trump in his first term. The US Department of State has even said that these companies knowingly engaged in the purchasing, selling and transporting as well as marketing of Iranian origin petrochemical products like polyethylene, methanol and toluene as well, worth millions of dollars as stated by the US State Department. In fact, the latter has even accused these companies of engaging in deceptive shipping practices and endangering other vessels and trade flows. The move comes as the US tries to disrupt what it calls Iran's destabilizing activities, including its nuclear program and support for terror groups as well. Iran has described these sanctions as malicious, aiming at undermining the economic development and welfare of the Iranian people. It was on Wednesday that the United States sanctioned over 115 individuals, vessels, entities linked to Mohammad Hussein Shamkhani, son of Ali Shamkhani, who is a top advisor to Iran's supreme leader. He is said to operate a vast network of more than 50 tankers and cargo vessels that transport Iranian and Russian oil, generating tons of billions of dollars in profits. Apart from these, the State Department also sanctioned 20 entities and 10 vessels involved in trading Iranian petroleum. The sanctions are the largest coordinated action of their kind since the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign on Iran began, and also come a month after it attacked Iran's nuclear program, hitting a uranium enrichment facility at Fordo as well as nuclear sites in Isfahan and Natanz.